Start this hour with breaking news from Turkey. It's where the country's prime minister says Ankara will create a 30-kilometer buffer zone in Syria once its military operation against the Kurds is complete. That's after he confirmed Turkish tanks have crossed into Syrian territory. The conflict began after the U.S. announced plans to create a new armed force with the Kurds close to the Turkish border. Washington later said the announcement was made by mistake, but it was not enough to stop the Turkish offensive, as on Saturday, Ankara launched airstrikes and began cross-border shelling. However, Kurds claim they have repelled the offensive so far. At least 10 people have been killed in the offensive, mostly civilians, according to the Kurds. Ankara insists the only casualties have been Kurdish fighters, and its army is taking all precautions to minimize civilian casualties. RT's Igor Zhdanov has been assessing the situation and looking at what brought Turkey back into Syria.
This is what the situation on the ground in Syria looks like right now. Afrin, the region where the Turks are carrying out their military operation. The area highlighted in green is where the Turkey-backed rebels are, to a certain extent at least. They are helping Ankara from the ground. Red are the Syrian army, the Syrian army guys. They don't have any problem with the Kurds, but they do have a problem with these guys, because this is the area, the green area is also the region which harbors Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or Nusra, a terrorist organization. And finally here you have Manbij. It is a city also controlled by the Kurds, and it could be Turkey's game plan. Erdogan has already said that after he's done with Afrin, Manbij is next. This operation hardly came out of the blue, you know. The Kurds have been historically a major thorn in Turkey's side. But what catalyzed things now was the Pentagon saying they are going to create a so-called Syrian border force.
The coalition is working jointly with the Syrian Democratic Forces to establish and train the new Syrian Border Security Force. Currently, there are approximately 230 individuals training in the BSF's inaugural class, with the goal of a final force size of approximately 30,000.
One very precise description of America's intentions there. By that point, Turkey had had enough. Ankara beefed up its forces on the Syrian border, deployed tanks, and President Erdogan vowed to destroy, quote, this terrorist force before Washington even has a chance to create it. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson tried to do some damage control, saying that the situation has been misportrayed, misdescribed, and that some people misspoke. Well, that wasn't nearly enough to contain Turkey's fury. Ankara has been keeping the United States in the loop about the operation against Washington's supposed ally. America, which arguably pitted Turkey against the Kurds, has now called on them to focus on the fight with ISIL, pretty much the same as saying it's every man for himself in this conflict. Turkey has also notified Syria about the action, which Damascus is not happy about at all. Russia, in its turn, has been cautious and called for all parties to pull the punches.
The main reason behind the developing crisis in this part of Syria is the provocative steps taken by the United States, which were aimed at isolating areas with predominantly Kurdish populations. Uncontrolled deliveries by the Pentagon of modern weapons to pro-American formations in northern Syria contributed to the rapid escalation of tension in the region and led to a special operation by Turkish troops.
Loose lips sink ships, they say. Well, this time we're looking at a potential all-out war. Igor Zhdanov, RT.
Turkey's military action against the Kurds in Syria triggered protests across parts of Europe. People took to the streets in a number of capitals to denounce the shelling and demanded de-escalation. We discussed Turkey's move and what provoked it with various analysts.
Previously, the United States had told Turkey that they would not arm the YPG, the Kurds, and that they would leave Syria once ISIS was destroyed. Now, ISIS has largely been destroyed, at least a territorial state. They do not have to stay and arm and train a Kurdish-dominated security force. And that change in American foreign policy is what has really driven Turkey to this, taking this step.
There was a similar operation about half a year ago of Turkey, and Turkey always indicated that it will not allow the Kurdish forces to pose a threat to Turkey. So I think the fact that the United States announced this special force was a trigger, but it didn't really change the situation. That Turkey is determined that the Kurdish forces all along the northern Syria border will not be a threat.
It's amazing that the US has, in the past week, managed to completely betray both its rival allies in this conflict. First, the total betrayal of Turkey announcing this border security force made up primarily of Kurds without any consultation with Turkey. And then, as soon as Turkey make an issue of it, immediately drop the Kurds altogether and say, oh, we're nothing to do with them, and basically give Turkey a free hand to slaughter them.
In European time, we had our first reports that Turkish airplanes entered Syrian airspace and started bombing PKK, YPG targets. What we know so far from the Foreign Ministry is that 108 targets have been hit using 72 warplanes, mainly F-16s and F-4s. We also know that most of the places that have been hit have been on the eastern side of Afrin. Judging from Prime Minister Binali Yıldırım's statement yesterday that a ground mission could start today, and judging from the location of the targets that have been hit, it looks like we can expect a ground operation from the FSA units in Azaz, who have just received support from Turkish tanks. So that's where we're at pretty much right now. Yesterday, we also saw Prime Minister Binali Yıldırım together with minority opposition leader Devlet Bahçeli. They showed a unified stance together. They both believe in this operation. The day before that, we saw major opposition leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu say he wished there was a little more diplomacy, but he would be okay with the operation if there was air support. Now we see air support, so judging from his comments, he's on board. So we see President Erdogan enjoying the full support of Turkish parliament in this operation.
Okay, so all unified. Now tell me, what is Russia's role in all of this?
Well, Russia had full control over Afrin, so it was very important to get Russian approval before Turkey entered. Without Russian approval, Turkey wouldn't have had the air support, and it would have been a ground operation, which would have been very, very tough, and it would have limited probably the operation to 10 or 20 kilometer buffer zone because the terrain was very tough. Putin is very, very invested in a political solution in Syria. He was worried that a Turkish incursion could torpedo the Sochi talks 10 days from now, where it's critical to achieve a political solution. But judging from the approval of Turkey entering airspace, we can see that Erdogan and Putin have reached some form of compromise, so they've reached a solution together.
Okay. Now, tell us, how equipped are the PKK and what kind of fight are we going to expect there on the ground?
Well, so far we've seen minimal resistance from the PKK and the YPG, but they are very well equipped. They have anti-tank guided missiles, US TOW missiles, Russian BM-21s, Stinger missiles. And as the Turkish army goes deeper into Afrin and Manbij, they will probably meet more resistance. The military capabilities, the organization, and the discipline of the YPG is probably much better than Daesh was at its pinnacle.
That's an incredible statistic there. That's pretty frightening.
It definitely is. The YPG is much better organized. They've enjoyed almost 2 years of U.S. training. They are fully outfitted with American weapons. Okay. And Russian weapons as well. So
why did we hear Mark Kimmett saying earlier that, you know, the US and Turkey didn't agree on, you know, on the level of fear here? They put Daesh on a different level to the PKK.
Well, the PKK YPG has been helping the US fight Daesh, and Mark Kimmett, I've talked with him before, and He sees it as okay as using one terrorist organization to fight another terrorist organization. But as they say, two wrongs don't make a right. President Erdogan doesn't see it that way. A terrorist organization is a terrorist organization.
Okay. Now, just remind us, bring us up to speed, why is this operation taking place?
Why is this operation taking place? Well, the main reason is Turkey wants to protect its borders. That's the absolute main reason. Another reason is Turkey's interested in keeping Syria whole. They don't want to see Syria break up after the civil war. They don't want to see instability. Instability across the border could lead to instability inside the border. So keeping Syria's Syrian soil, the integrity of Syrian soil whole is very important. Also, since the YPG has been in Afrin over 5 years, there's been over 350,000 people displaced from that region. The YPG has taken part in population engineering, population manipulation to shift the demographics to a more pro-YPG population in Afrin. And what Turkey wants to do is they want to bring these people back, help them rebuild their lives, and make Afrin whole again.
Okay, that was very good. Thank you for that analysis.
You're welcome. Thank
That
you.
was TRT World's Turkey analyst, Yusuf Erim. Thank you so much.